All right. I'm Ken Lane, API Evangelist. Welcome to another episode of API Evangelist Conversations, where I just chat with folks who are doing interesting things with APIs. Let's dive right in and see who our guest is. All right. Who are you?
Hi, my name is Stanislav Zmiev. I'm a tech lead of platform engineering at Monite. I also love APIs. I love making them good, but not just the APIs. I also do open source. I do publications, podcasts, uh, conferences, all sorts of things. Essentially, I just love the technology and love talking about it.
Nice. Well, you caught my attention on LinkedIn because you're doing some interesting things with versioning. So let's start with why, for folks who are listening in, why is managing API change important? Let's start with the fundamental.
Well, it's not always important, I guess. So when you have a very small API that is used only by internal clients, especially if they live in the same repositories, they've got the same kind of deployment as, then managing API changes is easy. You just change things at the same time, or, you do them in three steps of, like, extending the API, then switching your client, and then uh, switching your API, removing what you had in the old one. That's very simple. But once your API becomes public, once your API starts being used by external clients, and especially once your company is built around your API, which is the case for some companies who call themselves API first companies, that's where we have the problem. Because every time we mismanage anything regarding our API, for example, if we change it, they add a breaking change, our clients are going to be broken. Our clients are going to lose money. Same goes for when, for example, we're not doing it accidentally, but we decided that we want to change something about it, a new feature, whatever. But the feature is a breaking change in the API. It requires new arguments, or we're renaming something. Again, even if we tell our client beforehand, if they miss it or if anything else happens, they're going to be broke. They're going to be losing money. And as a result, we're also. So, which is why we're taking great care of making sure that our clients never break.
So important. And I appreciate you starting with, 'cause I think people come out of the gate thinking they've got to version everything and they don't really have a plan or strategy. And and maybe they have one or two consumers, or maybe it's an internal API, like you said. And so versioning's it seems simple on the surface, but it's pretty complex. So what is API versioning to help you manage this change?
Essentially, API versioning in its simplest form is saying, okay, this version of API has these endpoints with these schemas, whatever. We're returning this thing, and then we add like a path variable of, say, where we say v2 of the same path is going to have different endpoints, or different response, whatever, different business. And we just say that this endpoint exists in this API, then another endpoint exists in that API. So essentially, it's having two versions, two instances of your API deployed at the same time. And there are like a billion ways to do this, but nobody tells which these ways are.
Yeah, versioning, I mean, there's date-based, there's semantic, but I think it's something that confuses a lot of people. It's always the top kind of area discussion, and I'm really keen on your approach because you mentioned or alluded to you're into open source, and so why did you build your versioning solution for your payments API as an open source solution?
I guess calling us just the payments API is not enough. Monite does everything regarding to invoicing and documents. Essentially, we are embedded invoicing, where we are a super app that does integrations with accounting providers, payments providers, all sorts of things. So we do a lot more than just payments. But yeah, The reason I built it is as an API first company that Monite is, we take great care of our APIs, and we have multiple clients that are using it, using different versions of it. And at some point, we started trying out the basic solutions. Oh, let's just copy this code for one version, paste it, and let's see how it goes. The simplest approach. We were also thinking about, oh, should we use semantic versioning or date-based versioning? Where should we put it? We decided to put it into the header instead of the path. But instead, we should have thought, well, how do you actually manage these? Because when you copy them, after 5 versions, you have 5 times the code. And that is impossible to manage. That becomes really bad. I've heard of people doing 20 versions like this. Happily, this wasn't us. For us, it has become so painful that at some point I decided to, look elsewhere. I decided to look at how other companies do it. That's when I found what Stripe does. Essentially, I spoke with Brandon Leach, one of the guys managing it at Stripe before. We discussed how versioning could be done, and that's where I got the idea for the framework that I built. It's called Cadwin. Essentially, it does rolling API version. Our developers support, and Stripe does a similar thing, I guess. Our developers support only the latest version of the API, and they describe every time they make a breaking change, time they make a new version, they describe the difference between the previous version and this version. This allows us to essentially know how the versions have been changed, what has been breaking. And as a result, we have a tool that allows us to automatically convert every version into every other version. As a result, our developers have to support only one version, but our clients are getting all of them at once. If our client wants version from 2022, yes. 2023, even guess. But I guess 2022 is not used anymore. So we've already discontinued it. But all of the versions that are active, that are used by someone, you can freely use it or upgrade. And oftentimes it allows us to even ship features to older versions. So you don't even have to upgrade to get some of the new. And I guess this is the biggest thing about it. It's cheap and easy to.
Interesting. I did a podcast with Stripe. It wasn't the same person who did the versioning, but they have a lot of concern. There's a lot of anxiety around switching versions when you're baked into invoicing, when you're baked into payments, and that is literally your money. There's a lot of anxiety about this. So I could really see this helping kind of alleviate your concern on the producer side as far as the amount of code, but also from the anxiety because I mean, Ted did this 5 years ago, this integration, and no one wants to mess with it. And it's great, the new features, but we don't want to touch it. So there's a high cost to doing APIs. And so what's the cost of versioning? What's the cost of someone investing into change management at this level for other API providers who are looking to take Cadwin and put it to work?
Well, so the most expensive part of it, I guess, is building such a frame. It took me, incredible amount of time to get it just right. Thankfully, Cadwin has all sorts of documentation on how to build such a framework because nobody ever described it. So it's probably going to be easier. But after you build it, you start running into unforeseen problems. You're like, okay, we're just changing our versions. But then all of a sudden you realize that in some versions, well, in some newer versions, the data is a little bit different. Your data might have a different structure. And your developers, especially if they have never versioned, they're running into this state of thinking that versioning data is that now we're versioning everything, not just the API call. And that's where you start getting into the problems of, oh, the client created this thing on version 1, but then in version 3, they started trying to use it and some errors. And then the reverse is also true. They created on version 3, but then started using version 1, whatever. It's crazy. And so my recommendation, anybody, any startup, any company that is, thinking of doing versioning, be careful. it comes with a huge price. It's incredibly steep. And yes, it allows you to make like the perfect API in terms of the design. It allows you to change your design at any time without affecting your clients. It allows you to, make it pretty, make it easy to, to evolve. But the initial investment of learning, teaching your developers how to work with it, of managing these API chain blocks, of building the framework, of managing all the versions. Sometimes it's a work of art, to create a new version without breaking old stuff because your data might simply be incompatible. So my recommendation, think very carefully. And for smaller startups, I would suggest, to postpone it until they have more money, more developers, until they have shipped the actual product. Because if what I believe is that even if the product is not perfect at the API level, if it fulfills its purpose, if we can sell it, then we should sell it first, and only then should we, make the API beautiful.
That's such wise, pragmatic advice because I mean, versioning and change in itself causes anxiety, but I see a lot of people hand wringing and causing themselves anxiety even before they've shipped anything and trying to create the perfect solution. And so, I want to dive more into Cadwin and understand how it works and do some more storytelling around it outside of this to help people kind of think through it. But at the top of Cadwin, you say production ready, community driven, modern Stripe like API versioning in fast API. Do you consider Stripe to be like a standard that people should follow when it comes to versioning? And is Cadwin kind of baking that or how do you see it?
So Stripe is a big name that allows Cadwin to that allows me to say, hey guys, you know what? These guys do it really well. Well, we're doing the same. This is essentially me just trying to explain who we were, who I was following when developing Cadwin. Um, I think Stripe is at the top of the industries, somewhere at the top in terms of the API quality, in terms of the story they tell with their API. And most of the providers in terms of, fintech, in one way or another, are inspired by Stripe. So if Stripe, starts doing something tomorrow, I'm sure there will be 20 more companies.
Yeah.
Simply because, yeah, they are a big name and their APIs are of a high quality. Should every company follow that? I don't think so. I think that the companies should first consider what they need specifically for their product, uh, and that includes, if you are sure that you have the money right now and that your business model is really fit for API first, then yeah, follow Stripe in their version. It's good, and I failed to find any better approach. There are similar approaches. There are approaches that are really good for internal clients, but for external clients, I don't think there is anything that beats them just yet, at least publicly.
Again, very pragmatic. Thank you for that. Let's zoom out from the API and versioning and just about you. What motivates you?
I guess it's two things. Um, I mainly one. I really like the people around me, and when I was contributing to open source, it was always because of someone. It was always because, I wanted to solve someone's problems. Some of the time it's me, but most of the time it's my colleagues or the people in open source that I see, complaining about stuff. And, you know, the feeling of bringing, you know, bringing the solution to someone and solving their maybe not just a business problem, but a tooling, a technological problem where, a developer just becomes a tiny bit happier working on your tooling. That's the feeling that drives me and that drove me throughout. And I guess that's why I became a platform engineer in the first place, because, your clients are so close to you. It's, you're always getting this fast feedback, whether it's bad or good.
I like it. I like your style. I would say I'm gonna do some more storytelling around Cadwin and see what other people what else I can stir up, and then maybe we can have you back because versioning is a top discussion. But I would say more importantly, your kind of pragmatic approach to managing change and just I think is refreshing. And it's why I do this podcast because this feedback loop with folks like you, smart folks who know things better things than I do, is why I do this podcast. So, and the great part of this format is I can have you back as many times as I need. And let's definitely talk more in the future. And I appreciate you coming by.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Well, that's another one. Very cool. Versioning is always an interesting subject to talk about. Look forward to diving into Cadwin. Look forward to learning more, and we'll see what we can stir up in the future. Thanks, everyone.